Welcome to GTFO out of USA.
And if you've been following us, you know that we just got back from a 3-month-long trip all around South America. We visited 4 countries, including Peru, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile.
And now we're back in Colombia.
Our home base. But, now that we're back, we had a chance to kind of reflect back on our travels and also take a look at our bank statements to figure out how much this trip cost us.
Yeah, and a trip like this, I think, a minimum, you 4 countries in 3 months for 2, I would probably say it costs probably around...
What's your guess?
Probably, upwards of $30,000, probably $10,000 a month.
Yeah, right? How much do people spend on vacations, when you go on a vacation?
For 2.
Yeah, and we went and did all the touristy things too. We went to Machu Picchu, we went to Torres del Paine. So we had a lot of fun on this trip. We weren't trying to be super budget conscious. Although, we're nomads, this is our lifestyle, so we're always trying to save money. But let me know in the comments, how much do you think this trip cost us? And in the end, I'll tell you how much it really costs, because I love spreadsheets, and so I put all of our expenses in the spreadsheet, and I have all the stats right here.
And we kind of approached it, like we were saying, from a nomad perspective versus your, typical, hate to say it, but kind of your corporate, 2 weeks off. Like you go to Tulum, Mexico, and you spend 10 grand in a week. Yeah. I get it. But I think if you're smart about how you spend your money, you can really stretch that out. But you got to have bandwidth.
Yeah.
That's the key.
And part of the reason why we wanted to go on this trip is to actually see all these countries and figure out which ones we like, where we might want to live. Because right now we're based in Colombia, but that's not,
it's not fixed.
Yeah, it's not fixed. If we find something better, we can go to a different place. It's not like we have a house here.
But right now, I have to say it's mid-January and sunset.
Pretty good, huh?
It's pretty good. It's 70 degrees out, and we're 68, 70 for sunset.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to. Well, we GTFO'd out of the USA, back in 2022, and so it's been an adventure and just a journey the last 2 years, and particularly visiting these last 4 countries. Kind of gives you perspective, because if you're just in one location, this is what happens to most people, is your world becomes kind of like the 4 walls that you're living in year after year, and you lose track of time.
Get stuck in a rut.
You get stuck in a rut, whether you're a millennial or you're a baby boomer. Especially if you're a baby boomer, the years start ticking and they catch up.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it.
Let's go for it.
So we're going to go through each of the 4 countries that we visited in order and kind of recap what we did there and how much things cost. And so our first country was Peru. So we flew from Bogota to Lima, and then we went to Cusco. We went to the Sacred Valley, which is in the area around Cusco. And we also visited Machu Picchu. And we stayed in Peru for 5 weeks total. So basically, this was the first leg of our trip, and we didn't really know what to expect, but we had heard that Peru was relatively cheap. So that was the motivation behind going there. We also wanted to go to Argentina for exact same reason, but I'll get into that later. Let's kind of talk through what we did in Peru and how we spent our time. What was the highlight of your trip?
The outside of Cusco and the Sacred Valley, Bisac. It's kind of bohemian town, but with great places to hike.
Yeah.
Just the local hiking. If you want to go to the waterfalls, it's
absolutely beautiful, archaeological sites. I mean,
yes.
Peru is unique and it's so impressive. The mountains.
It's dramatic because you have 20,000 foot mountains. You're in this valley, and it's pretty rural.
Yeah.
So you're out. It feels raw. So Peru is raw in the sense that dramatic mountains. The time we were there, it was a dry climate. Mm-hmm. The sun's strong. You can still see snow in the snow caps at 20,000 feet.
Yeah. But what was amazing about that for me is that, even though we were staying in this rural part, they had the most amazing food, the most amazing restaurants. And check this out. So the entire time we were in Peru, 5 weeks, I think we only cooked at home once. We cooked dinner once. We maybe made breakfast, but we basically went out to eat
Guilty as charged.
the whole time, 3 times a day. Yeah, the food is incredible. It's so fresh. It's so like flavorful and amazing. And what we spent on food, we spent like about $1,200 the entire time, the entire month. So that's really good considering that we were going out to eat all the time.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. It's especially when you're kind of moving around a lot. Sometimes you have great intentions to cook, but it's kind of difficult
Yeah.
if you're moving week to week. When you're traveling, that can be challenging sometimes preparing meals.
Yeah. So for you, what were the pros and cons of Peru?
I mean, like I just said, just the access to nature. And they have great hiking. If you want an adventure, they have that also. The cons, I don't know. I don't think there was really. It was a dry season. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
It was like I wished. I'd like to see Peru after the rainy season, not during, because it can be pretty intense. But after the rainy season, and just see how green they have. Beautiful waterfalls. I hiked and found some nice waterfalls, but I didn't really find too many cons really.
Yeah, I would add to that another pro that Peru had for me was, in addition to like amazing food, there was a really cool expat community. So we were able to find like yoga classes and chiropractors. So it's definitely like there are pockets there where you can go and be like, wow, I'm in the middle of like rural Peruvian valley, but there's amazing restaurants, there's amazing like events
That's
going
true.
on. So that's really cool.
Got some great chiropractic work there.
And in our 5 weeks in Peru, we spent a total of, drumroll, $5,000 for 2 people, everything included, including the airfare.
That's not bad. That's
Not
pretty
bad,
good.
huh?
That's not
Let's
bad.
see if Argentina can beat it. We spent about $1,000 on all AirBnBs, and that's for not including Lima.
Did that include Machu Picchu, or is that separate from Machu?
That did not include Machu Picchu because I wanted to kind of keep those expenses separate because Machu Picchu is like the Disney World.
It's a
of
Disney
Peru.
World of Peru.
Like
definitely.
Peru itself is cheap, right? But our trip to Machu Picchu, and we went there
That's like a separate ledger.
yeah. We went there for 3 days, and it was like $850 for 2 people, including the tickets to get there,
The train.
staying there. Yeah, the train is really expensive. So, not only do you have to book the tickets to go into the park, but you also have to take a train to get there. But what did you think? Did you think it was worth it going to Machu Picchu?
Yeah, I thought it was worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were already there, so I'm not including in that price like the cost of airfare to get to Peru. Obviously, that would be more expensive. Like from Bogota, it was about $500.
One way.
One way for 2 people.
One way for 2 people. So
Yeah, but we got our tickets in advance, so we probably saved some money there. But yeah. So our next stop on our 3 months journey was Uruguay, and unlike Peru, we only spent 5 days in Uruguay.
And that was a fast-paced trip because we went to Montevideo, then we went to
Punta del Este.
Punta del Este.
Yeah, but we did that all in 5 days because we decided we were gonna rent a car and just kind of explore that country. Uruguay is not a big country, but we wanted to see as much as we can in the 5 days that we were there.
Yeah, it was amazing landscapes. They don't have the 20,000 foot mountains, but they have foothills. And in Punta del Este has a beautiful coastline.
Yeah, and it was nice and green. It was springtime in Uruguay. It was a little bit raining when we were there, but in general, beautiful country, really nice people. And what surprised us the most about Uruguay is that after coming from Colombia and Peru, it felt like we had left Latin America.
Totally, that was like the first impression. You're like
Yeah.
you're like in the first world, Uruguay, of Latin America. It's definitely the most, I would say, first world country in terms of just the highways. There's a lot of speed cameras. You got to be careful about that.
Yeah, the traffic rules actually apply in Uruguay.
Yeah, unlike the rest of Latin America,
Yeah.
there are no driving rules basically, or they're not enforced. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but we wanted to check out Uruguay because a lot of expats are interested in moving there. And we've heard a lot of great things, like they have a very favorable immigration
yeah.
policy, and also like some tax-free zones, which is great if you have a business. But Uruguay is a little bit more expensive. It's considered one of the more expensive, if not the most expensive country in South America. So we didn't want to spend too much time there. But yeah, so to give you an idea, in the 5 days that we were there, we spent close to like $1,000, tickets included. But nevertheless, like the car rental was $165. Our Airbnb was about $360. And then everything else, like food and everything, the food and cost of living wasn't that much. It cost about like $40 to $50 a day on running expenses. But yeah, because we were there a short time, we had to kind of like amortize those costs on travel and car. And
yeah, so you don't get like the discount a month long or a week long stay that typically you would like Airbnb. And the restaurants are kind of expensive. We kind of ate. We kind of cooked indoors while we were
to save some money.
We were trying to save some money, and
but what were the pros and cons of Uruguay for you?
Well, like if you want like space, open highway, pretty coastline, good infrastructure. It kind of reminded me of the West. It was really. If that's what you're looking for, like in Latin America, I would recommend Uruguay.
Yeah,
for sure.
It definitely has those like first world luxuries. But I have to mention this because this was the only con of Uruguay. I loved like the how people were so nice and everything was so like comfortable and accessible. But in the capital, in Montevideo, I was surprised to see a lot of homeless people. And not that it's, I guess it's not bad, but it's a symptom of something going on in the country. And I also noticed that a lot of the beautiful architecture that they have, the historic architecture in downtown, is not being repaired, it's not being kept. A lot of the buildings were abandoned and graffiti over.
I wasn't that shocked by it. I mean, living in Los Angeles and big cities, just putting things in context. Nothing like that. Nothing like the USA in terms of dystopia, homelessness, decrepit infrastructure. No.
True. I guess I just wasn't expecting to see that in Uruguay because everybody always raves about how it's like the nicest country in South America. So the next stop on our journey was Argentina, and we were planning to spend a lot of time there, and that's what we did. We spent exactly 5 weeks, the same amount of time as we did in Peru. But what we didn't expect was
the cost of living. Surprise!
Because we were planning our trip last year, a year ago. We were looking at how much things cost in Argentina, and everybody's saying like, it's super cheap, you should go there, you'll live like a king. But when we got there, it turned out to be completely not what we expected.
And that's because, they have a new president, Milei. And what he did to curb the rapid inflation Argentina has really been experiencing for the last 20 years is to peg their currency, the peso, to the US dollar. So whenever they're not the first, so whenever a country does this, you're going to have massive inflation and a lot of economic kind of shock waves to the country. And so, we were visiting Argentina in his first year, basically 1 year after his election.
The economic shock therapy is what they call Milei's economic policy, and that's kind of what we experienced. I mean, okay, so we spent 5 weeks total in Argentina, and we stayed a week in Buenos Aires, almost a month in Mendoza, and then we went to Bariloche. And unlike Peru, where we went out like almost every day, definitely every day, multiple times a day,
total
and did
opposite.
all these touristy activities, once we arrived in Argentina and we had that like sticker shock, we were like really conscious about how much money we were spending. So we were eating at home. We didn't do any excursions. I'll give you an example. Like in Mendoza, they had these wine tours where they take you to wine country, Uco Valley, and we both love wine, and I really wanted to go on a tour like that. But it was like $250 and up per person for a wine tour.
There's no way.
Compared to California, maybe that doesn't sound like that much, but I mean, for me, I'm not willing to spend that kind of money on a day tour. So we hacked it a little bit.
It's better just to spend that money on wine versus going to a winery.
Exactly. Because if there's one thing that is still cheap in Argentina, it's wine. Thank God.
Wine and yerba mate.
That's right.
And empanadas sometimes.
But yeah, so we were trying to be like money cautious when we were there, and instead of like going on a wine tour, we took a bus and we went to a winery a little bit outside of Mendoza and had like an amazing wine tasting for, I think it was $30 for 2 people, and that counts as credit for purchase. So we were able to walk out of it with a really nice bottle of wine. And then we also went to like see Aconcagua. So we rented a car for a day. But you know, a car rental in Uruguay, for example, was about $65 a day, and in Argentina it was $85 a day. So you know, things add up.
Yeah, Argentina definitely, especially now. It's just not. It's less expensive than the USA. Put things in context.
Definitely less expensive
than the USA. But it's just what you read about in Argentina. The past is just no longer applies to the present moment.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Like we spent about $1,500 on AirBnBs for 5 weeks, which is great. That's amazing. The transportation was relatively cheap too. But I told you, like in Peru, for a month, the food cost us only about $1,300, and in Argentina it was almost $2,000.
Wow!
And we didn't even go out that much, and we didn't do any shopping.
We didn't go out. Yeah, we didn't go out that much at all. And a couple of times we did go out. We were actually kind of somewhat disappointed, actually.
Yeah, but that's a topic for another conversation.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the end, we ended up spending a similar amount of money that we did in Peru on the same amount of time we spent in Argentina. But our lifestyle was different. We didn't go on any like big excursions like Machu Picchu. We
kind of doing more the nomad.
Didn't do any souvenir shopping. Yeah, we were like
kind of like living there and kind of the nomad, kind of living there day to day.
But still, Argentina was amazing. So our last stop was Chile, and Chile was the biggest surprise of our trip because we didn't expect much of it. We actually didn't plan to go there at all, but it ended up being.
Yeah, it was like the hidden gem of the trip. Like we were just gonna fly. Originally, we were just gonna go to Chile, go to Santiago, and fly back home. Mm-hmm. And then when we started to look into doing some investigation, we said, okay, well, there's Patagonia there, and the Patagonia side has unique adventure compared to Argentina, and quite honestly, it was less expensive.
Yeah.
It seemed like more accessible. And so we were just surprised by the nature. It was just awesome.
Yeah, no, Chile was definitely like a hidden gem, the biggest surprise of our trip. And, you know, these are the kinds of things you only find out when you go to a place. We had heard from people that Chile is quite expensive compared to Argentina. But in our experience, it ended up being almost the opposite. Like we chose to go to Patagonia on the Chilean side because it was cheaper, not because we don't like Argentina, Patagonia. But yeah, in Chile, we spent about 2.5 weeks, and we stayed close to Puerto Varas, that's the lake region of Chile. And then we went down to Chilean Patagonia, to Puerto Natales, and we went to the Torres del Paine National Park, which if you're interested, check out our video about that.
Yeah, and that was absolutely amazing, and it's definitely a journey. It's far, so it costs some more. You know, it costs you a little bit to get down there.
Yeah, but you know,
because it's the end of the world, so
it's the end of the world.
It's not cheap to get to the end of the world.
Yeah, but you know the airfare wasn't that bad, and the park itself is not that expensive. The only thing that was surprised me kind of was expensive is the bus to get to the park, because you have to take this like 2-hour bus. And there's only one bus company that runs the buses. So, but other than that, the biggest surprise of Chile was that the shopping was relatively cheap. Like we bought a lot of clothes there. Clothes are cheap, and the food was actually really good too. And we ended up spending
lots of good seafood.
Yeah, not that much money. Again, I wanted to give you an example of a car rental. You know, in Uruguay it was $65 a day. Argentina $85 a day, and in Chile we were able to rent a car for less than $50 a day. So
yeah, that was a nice surprise.
So to kind of wrap up our, to sum up our trip, I'm gonna rank the countries based on how cheap or expensive they were. Obviously, Peru was probably the cheapest. It was amazing. The food there is so affordable. You can go out to eat and everything else as well. Number two, I would say, was still Argentina, despite the inflation they're experiencing. But some things are just a lot more expensive in Argentina, like clothes are expensive. You know, clothes are more expensive than Chile, and a lot of Argentinians actually cross the border into Chile to go shopping.
But Buenos Aires is a beautiful place, and it's definitely the architecture and just the layout. It's worth visiting.
Yeah, and then Chile was number three. It was less expensive than we expected, so that was a nice surprise. And then Uruguay is probably the most expensive place, but still, again, like we said, compared to the U.S., that's nothing.
Yeah, it's still a lot less expensive than the Western world.
And now to the biggest question of our video. So what do you think our 3-month trip cost us? All expenses included, airfare, flying to probably like 10 different locations, going to all these amazing national parks, renting cars, going out to eat, doing shopping.
For 2 people for 3 months, I would say up minimum $30,000.
Drumroll. We spent $15,000 on our entire trip. And to put this in perspective, that's $2,500 per person per month. Last time I was in the US, I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is a nice place to live. But my expenses for me alone were $2,600 and up. And I didn't even own a car. I didn't go out to eat. That was like bare minimum.
That was
surviving.
Kind of austerity living.
Yeah. And here we're like traveling the world, experiencing all these amazing places and everything they have to offer. So
yeah, so you went from like austerity living in the USA in a pretty hipster town to, traveling South America for less money.
Yeah. If that's not a win, I don't know what is. But the final question I wanted to ask you, so if you had to choose between these 4 different countries, where would you want to spend some more time? Where would you want potentially to live or settle down?
Oh, well, that's a big question, but I definitely want to go back to Chile and check out their other beautiful national parks. They have 42 national parks, so that can take a while. And Peru, I like spending like some time, like the weather-wise. Peru has probably the best weather year-round because they're closer to the equator. So, and
the mountains.
In the mountains.
Yeah.
And just the rawness of Peru. I like the adventure, the rawness. What about you?
Well, you might be surprised based on everything that I've said in this video, but my absolute favorite country was Argentina. I loved Argentina, and it's too bad that it's getting more expensive compared to how it was, but it's still not bad. But just in terms of like the culture, the architecture, and we were there in a good season too, so maybe if I was there in the winter or in the midst of summer, that may have influenced my opinion, but I am so in love with Argentina. I would go back to Buenos Aires. I would buy an apartment there.
Sounds like that's, yeah, she keeps talking about an apartment in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, and I mean, it all depends again what you're into. If you're into the outdoors, you know, Peru or Chile are these amazing places, but I like wine. I like culture.
And I have to say, Buenos Aires has the most beautiful parks in Latin America, by far.
Yeah.
They have the biggest and the most beautiful parks.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that you learned something in this video, and if you're thinking about going to any of these countries, take our advice and you can plan and budget your trip. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, definitely recommend visiting.
GTFO while you still can.
And if you like this video, please subscribe and like and activate the notification bell.
All right.